What's up, everybody? Peter Exis O'Coffer here, and welcome to another episode of the Purple Manifesto. And in Purple Manifesto, we focus on the one and only Prince Rogers Nelson. So today, the topic we're covering is Prince and the guitar. Now, this is loosely based. I just realized I did this outline, didn't even go back to this paper I wrote. But I did do a paper entitled Is Prince the Greatest Guitarist of All Time, where I compare Prince and Jimi Hendrix. And I'll touch on what I concluded with that. I wrote this and submitted it in 2021, and it is for a edited volume that will be coming out at some point. I mean, this is a former professor at Purdue who's working on this, and academic books, they have their own, they work on their own time schedule. So maybe it's a good thing I did not read that, since, what I'm doing is similar but different. And so, but at some point that book will be out, and I'm kind of glad now that I'm not verbatim going off of what I did on that. But Prince, obviously, his guitar playing, since his passing has gotten a lot more respect. And part of that is, like Jimi Hendrix, Prince was, he saved his best playing for live. And with, folks uploading and the vault even emptying even more, following Prince's death, and a lot of those live recordings ending up on YouTube, people are like, oh, wow. And I remember, literally a couple days after he passed, everybody rediscovered Prince and his, amazing guitar solo and his showmanship with While My Guitar Gently Weeps, when George Harrison was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So that's already, getting eyeballs and moving up in the lore of rock history. It's interesting, these Facebook, chat rooms are still, every once in a while, they'll get into a very good discussion, and it's died down the last 2 or 3 years, but like 2020 and 2021, I think Facebook was actually paying people to go in there and seed them with interesting questions and have them going. But anyway, in the last, probably earlier this year, in the winter, I ran across a couple of chat rooms that were based on generation. So it's very interesting. So within a couple of weeks, a boomer chat room on Facebook, and of course, Clapton and Hendrix dominated that talk. But the Gen Xers, it was pretty much Prince, and everybody kind of went back to While My Guitar Gently Weeps. So, let's start with the Rolling Stone greatest guitarists of all time. So they put out the first list, Rolling Stone, in 2003. And it was 100 at the time, and Prince clocked in at 33, which I remember, at the time, it fit because his best stuff wasn't out there. As I just said, his live stuff was good, and I knew Prince was a much better guitarist than 33 out of 100, but I knew that because I had a bunch of Prince live bootlegs. Rolling Stone had to go off of the official releases and what they had access to. So 2023, last year, Rolling Stone put out a new list, and this time was the top 250 of all time. Prince clocked in at 14 there. So obviously they've been, whoever, and they get a fellow guitarists doing this, but, obviously they've been poking around on YouTube and realized, Prince is a lot better than I thought. Okay, so let's clear up one misconception. There's this famous quote from Eric Clapton, and someone asked Eric Clapton, who's the greatest guitarist of all time? And supposedly Eric Clapton answered, I don't know, ask Prince, insinuating that Prince, is the greatest of all time. That quote is false. I mean, it didn't happen. But, when Prince passed, Eric Clapton, the day after, took to social media. I think it was Twitter at the time, which is now X. And he said, essentially, he talked about going to see Purple Rain when it came out, and he was at a low point in his life, and Purple Rain inspired him, and musically and everything else. So, yeah, Eric Clapton has a lot of respect for Prince. That quote is not true. But, I mean, he had enough respect for Prince to post, about how, as an artist, Purple Rain, the movie, affected him as an artist and kind of re-energized him. So that's, I mean, as an artist, that's the biggest compliment that can be paid. Now, a lot, the assumption out there is that Prince was, influenced by Jimi Hendrix. Well, actually, Prince, claims, he's more influenced by Carlos Santana, and for the most part, he was. I mean, there's a lot more Carlos Santana in Prince than Jimi Hendrix. But the interesting thing is, there's some real Jimi Hendrix in Prince too, and Prince was good enough where he could toggle between those two, and usually he was doing Santana, but Prince could do some Hendrix if he wanted to. So let's set this up. I mean, to me, there are four benchmarks that when you talk about great guitarists from this era. I'm basically, let's talk the classic rock era, the 70s and 80s, which Prince is part of. These newer guitarists, let's stick to that era. So, they influenced everybody else. I know there's some great guitarists out there now, even though, the music today is not as guitar driven as it was back then. But, so you have what I call the shredders. Jimi Hendrix was the first. A lot of other good shredders. I mean, you got Jimmy Page, and I talk about the 10 most important guitarists in the classic rock podcast. Talk about Page and his unique strength. I think he was a great guitarist, but he really was the master at finding a lot of interesting tones. So, but the shredders, Jimi Hendrix and Eddie Van Halen. Eddie came along in the early 80s and with the tapping and just the sheer speed of his playing. And he influenced a lot of other, hard rockers and shredders afterwards. So really, Jimi Hendrix and Eddie Van Halen are kind of the most influential of the shredders, and I'm using that. Most people will, most lists have Jimi Hendrix ranked number one, and then Eddie in the top 15. I'm trying to stay away from who's best because that's very, art is subjective. But I think you could definitely say when it comes to hard rock guitar and shredders that Jimi Hendrix and Eddie Van Halen are the most influential. On the other spectrum, you have David Gilmour, and David Gilmour is slower style, very emotive, meaning emotion. He really brings emotion into his playing. Not that Hendrix and Eddie Van Halen did not, but certainly. When I think of Jimmy, I think of, using the guitar as an effects, not only as a musical instrument, but as an effects instrument. And then when I think of Eddie Van Halen, I think of just the speed of what he could play and his dexterity and the sounds, the sound effects he could make. I mean, he didn't have as many as Hendrix did, but he certainly had his own style. And then, Eddie could be mind blowing. I mean, the famous eruption. So, so you have the more mellow David Gilmour one spectrum, and you had Hendrix and Jimi on the other spectrum, and then kind of sitting in the middle to me is Clapton. Eric Clapton could do both. I think Prince kind of sits in the middle there with Clapton in some way. Let me talk for a minute about some of Prince's stellar classic. I mean, this is, a couple of the live things here on YouTube that you can run down and listen to. And this is, these four are one of the reasons I think why Prince goes from 14 to 33, or from 33 to 14 in the Rolling Stone greatest guitarist of all time. So, The Love We Make, May 5th, 2011 in Los Angeles. This is, Prince in this 08 to 2011, 2012 phase just masters, and certainly meets Clapton and, in this middle, in some ways surpasses him, and even goes into the, matching David Gilmour for this, emotive, this slowed down, but very, very emotional and in its own ways, very blues-based playing. And The Love We Make is one of those from, May 2011. The second one is, and this is where he goes full Hendrix, Erotic City, First Avenue, June 6th, 1984. So, listen to that bad boy. That's about 8-9 minutes. I remember when I first got this on bootleg, I should have brought, dug through that bootleg and thrown it on, but, yeah, this is Prince at, Let's Go Crazy's Hendrix, but this is Prince, not only doing Hendrix, but doing it in a very funky, a funky way too. Next is Little Red Corvette from Montreux in 2009, a beautiful video, DVD quality on YouTube. Again, this is a more like The Love We Make, and this is where Prince is really channeling Eric Clapton and moving into David Gilmour territory. Just the whole arrangement of Little Corvette in this is just amazing. And finally, obviously, While My Guitar Gently Weeps, which is available on all of the streaming services. You don't have to go to YouTube to see that, but you might, listening to it is one thing, seeing it is another, because he puts on a show too, like Hendrix used to. So, quickly, let me summarize where I came down on, who was better, Jimi Hendrix or Prince. Basically, I did not take a side. My conclusion is Jimi Hendrix is the most creative guitarist ever. He really, he used the guitar as a special effects and did things with the guitar and sounds with the guitar that nobody else has done since. He just approached the instrument very differently, and he's very, very unique in it. I know it's interesting. I was on one of the Jimi Hendrix chat rooms about 2 or 3 years ago, and all Hendrix fans, and someone asked who's the second best guitarist of all time, and it was evenly split between Stevie Ray Vaughan and Prince, which is, definitely a credit to Prince. Stevie Ray was I'm sure there were differences, but he was heavily influenced by Jimi Hendrix, and, for Prince to run neck and neck with Stevie Ray Vaughan when Prince incorporated Hendrix, but a lot of other guitarists, principally Carlos Santana, is a testament to Prince's great playing. But I said the reason why I didn't say one or the other is I really think Prince is maybe the most versatile guitarist ever, because I don't think you can, if you wanted to hire somebody to be Jimi Hendrix, good luck, and to sound like Hendrix. You can't do that. If you want to hire, if you wanted to recreate Prince's as a guitarist and the breadth of his skill and his playing, then in theory you could do it, but you need to hire 7 or 8 different guitarists. I mean, that's how good Prince was. And I talked earlier about Prince and his in the spectrum of great players. I mean, he can jump in the sandbox and in Hendrix's sandbox and play there with him, run with him. He can do Eddie Van Halen. If you go the Auburn Hills show, the end of SHHH, the ballad. Again, that's Prince killing the ballads. I think Auburn Hills was from 2005, 2006. But at the end of that, Prince does a little bit of eruptions, so he showing off his Eddie Van Halen skills. And then, I just, talked about The Love We Make and Little Red Corvette and how he's over there dancing with David Gilmour. So, he can play in all 3 of these sectors of great guitarists. So yeah, I mean, Prince's versatility is so good. And not only is Prince, I mean, everybody always talks about, lead, when they think great guitarists, they think lead guitarists and, and soloing, and Prince was a great soloist, but Prince is, you could argue he's the best rhythm guitarist of all time. And I say that because, he could do, he could do funk rhythm and he could do rock rhythm. He certainly, there's Phelps, Catfish Collins, Bootsy's brother, played with James Brown, and P-Funk is a great funk rhythm guitarist. Jimmy Nolan was the one who came up, really brought the chicken scratch guitar to the masses. But Prince, had a couple, could definitely do that, and I'll get to that in a minute. And then, Malcolm Young with AC/DC was a great rhythm guitarist. Everybody talks about Angus Young as a great lead in his solos and everything else. And Angus and Malcolm usually both end up on the list. But if it wasn't for Malcolm Young's great, rhythm guitar work, no one would know anything about his brother Angus Young. But let's look at a couple, Prince's mastery. So when it comes to rock rhythm guitar, the song guitar, I mean, that's just a powerful riff. Bambi, Cream, Electric Chair, When You Were Mine. When You Were Mine's a little more rockabilly, but that's Prince doing rock rhythm and doing it very well. And then, I talked about the funk rhythm guitar earlier, Alphabet Street. I mean, that's the first one that comes to mind. Kiss, which is, Prince did his own thing as far as funk rhythm, and Your Like is, because funk rhythm guitar was a lot cleaner than rock rhythm. I mean, because you don't get distortion, and the goal of funk rhythm guitar and that chicken scratch guitar is to turn the guitar into a percussion instrument. So you don't want any distortion. I mean, you want a really, really clean sound, so it sounds clipped and gets really, has a really sharp and really, but Kiss is interesting because, I mean, geez, that tone is, it's electric, but it's kind of acoustic as well. So that's a very, very interesting tone that Prince gets with that. And then, as far as the studio stuff, Prince's best lead, obviously, is Let's Go Crazy. That's what he's famous for, his rock lead guitarist. I really, but and then America, I mean, Prince does both. He does funk and he does rock guitar. Great, funk, rock, and lead in that song. So yeah. So my conclusion, then, I mean, Prince number 14 all time guitarist. Top 250. And I did that paper because, most lists put Jimi Hendrix number one, and I was like, well, let me throw the two of them together and have the argument. And again, I think it's more of what style you prefer, whether you like Hendrix style or Prince's style. I remember they were having a fight, but I think this was a Prince, Facebook group, and who was better, Prince or Hendrix, and a couple of the Prince fans made the argument, well, Hendrix was sloppier, and Hendrix was, well, first of all, I mean, you can't be a funk guitar and be sloppy because there's no distortion there. I mean, if you make a mistake, it's gonna be magnified. Prince, Hendrix was some people have said Page is sloppy. I've never heard Jimmy or thought that Jimmy Page was a sloppy guitarist, but Hendrix could be. But one of the things I love about Hendrix, at times he would, when I talk about the 10 most influential guitarists of classic rock, I talk about this there, but I have to mention it here. Hendrix would go and kind of rodeo with his guitar, and I mean that where he would turn up the game. He would fight the guitar. I don't know if he was because he was stoned out of his head or he just wanted a challenge. And so, you could tell that the guitar was hard to control. Probably because he had the volume, the gain up too high, and the high gain is never a good thing. Unexpected and unwanted distortion happens, all kinds of things. But I respect, and I thought it was very interesting and fascinating listening to some of these live performances where Hendrix was literally playing a live wire guitar, and it's like he was doing a high wire act, and sometimes, yes, when you have your guitar cranked on 11 and it's teetering, getting out of control, you're going to have sloppy playing. But I find it fascinating to listen to. So anyway, let me hit this close. Had fun doing this. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. I have my own music here on the channel, but on all the streaming services. I got 5 albums of my own. The first album is Exodus, Exodus, Book 1. I also have, leave some comments, please. I also have 2 science fiction fantasy novels and novella on Amazon. So thank you again for coming through, and I will see you next episode.